Greetings, everyone, and welcome to my Wednesday night live. Well, I have a special presentation for you guys today. Upon, you could say, many requests, I decided to give the untold history of Commander Valiant Thor, his association with the United Federation of Worlds, the different challenges and trials he had to undergo to prove to the Venusian Council that he was the man to help in the liberation of the Earth. I'm also going to share some of the um, operations that the Alliance, under the direction or in collaboration rather, of Commander Valiant Thor, who's always been like a mentor to the Alliance. Um, all the different operations that were actually executed in terms of helping the Earth become liberated. So today's going to be a very in-depth analysis of Commander Valiant Thor. We're going to go over his upbringing on planet Venus and the things that he had to, again, endure as not only a child, but also as a young adult in preparation for his mission as an envoy to the Earth. So this is actually taken out of a chapter in my next book that I haven't even yet published. So here you guys go, Commander Valiant Thor, and what led to his mentorship and leadership within the Earth Alliance. First and foremost, I want to welcome everyone for being here. For those that don't know me, my name is Ishmael Perez, and I am the author of those amazing books behind me, The Secret Government, Invisible Architects, and of course, Our Cosmic Origin, both which are available on Amazon. Whoa, excuse me, I just had to clear my lungs here. All right, and then also I want to extend gratitude to each and every single one of you guys for being here, and also for those that watch it on the replay. And then right before I get into the presentation, I do want to mention Folium. All right, Folium is a holistic approach to actually eliminate all the parasites, metals, nanoparticulates, you name it, from your body. All right. It also helps to clean up the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, so that the natural healing process of the body takes place. I always put the link in the description. If you go through my link, you get like $15 off, which is better than paying full price. All right. With no further ado, let's get right into it. The untold story of Commander Valiant Thor. Now, this is information, guys, that was not revealed in any of these known books that have been published already. One of them being The Stranger at the Pentagon. So this is new information that was actually given to me directly, especially when it came to the different trials and tribulations he had to undergo in order to become, liaison to the Earth. This is information that has never been shared in the history of this world, but on the Ishmael Perez channel, you guys are going to get first dibs. So, taken from chapter 12 of my unpublished book, I'm going to give you guys a little preview of one of the chapters in my next book to come that I'm not going to publish for another 6 months to a year. It's about Commander Valiant Thor. Okay, so we do know that we've heard stories, okay, especially within the awakened community, that circulate about a serene man with ageless eyes who actually arrived unannounced in Washington, D.C. in the year 1956, right? He spoke perfect English without moving his lips, and he carried no fingerprints, okay? And he called himself Valiant Thor. All right, so again, this is taken from one of my chapters in my book that I have not yet published. So you guys are going to get first dibs on the untold story of Commander Valiant Thor. All right, so let's continue here. So for those who claim to know him, of course, he presented himself as a representative from Venus, which he was, here under mandate of a higher council, and I'll explain in a little bit, to help Earth pivot away from self-destruction. As many of you guys know, around the 1940s, late 40s and early 50s, we detonated the atom which was a huge kind of signal to the galactics, letting them know that we're no longer children, that we're playing with, fire and big weapons, and we need interference, okay? So you could say that during those days, the call went out, and of course, Valiant Thor was dispatched from the Venusian Council, who was then working with what is known as the United Federation of Planets. And he became a selected commander. He was actually voted by a council to be the envoy of the Earth, whose mission would be to stand at the hinge of a dangerous century and hold a door open to a different future, okay, to a different future. So the Venusians, let's go back to, I'm going to explain a little bit about the culture and civilization of Venus here. So you guys are going to get some new cosmic, or let's call it interplanetary intel that has never been heard of before. The Venusians do not live upon the scorched surface or probes the scorched surface of their planet that we have, of course, tried to observe. That's why when we sent probes to Venus, there is nothing there. They actually inhabit what mystics called the second envelope, which is inside of the surface. Okay, this is a phase that shifted the biosphere, braided through the planet's atmosphere and magnetosphere, where matter is more subtler, more luminous, and responsive to directed consciousness. The cities on Venus are not built so much like the cities here on the Earth, okay? They have lattices of living crystal and atmospheric water sculpted by harmonic engineering. They also rise above cloud decks like transparent reefs, and the reason our probes do not detect them is because they exist in the fifth dimension and up. So energy is drawn from the phase resonance. This is how they power up their civilization, not combustion, right? They are what I call in my our cosmic origin course a type 2 civilization. So they don't use combustion, they don't use fission, they use phase resonance, but a precise also coupling between geometry, intention, and the planet's own symphonic fields. So their science is very in tune with their spirituality, in other words, okay? And so Commander Valiant Thor was born as Valor Thoren. That was his name, okay, in Venus. Valor Thoren, Thoren. And he was born in the coastal areas of the city known as Aetherion. Etherion. That's how you pronounce that city. Again, I accessed this information from the interplanetary records. So he came to us from a city called Etherion, which is a city anchored in Venus' high equatorial springs. And so his family's lineage blended engineers of Aryan guild builders of spacecraft with cantors, which is an order that curated the archives of memory and ethics. So from an early age, you could say that Valiant Thor displayed two uncommon aptitudes. He was a maverick engineering, right? He was good at precision for field dynamics. He was also a maverick mediator, stillness, the kind of silence that makes other minds unclench. He was very good at calming his mind. And so on Venus, you could say that the children used to pass through triune schooling. Their educational system is so advanced in comparison to ours. So their children pass through what is known as triune schooling, craft culture, and of course, they also had to undergo a deep training in consciousness. Okay, so apparently Val Thoren excelled in all three. Okay, he was like a genius. In craft, he learned to tune torsion shells and polarized gravitic mantles, which are the skins around vehicles that allow them to skate through the density gradients. In culture, he studied the histories of nearby worlds, including Earth's agitated adolescency, because to the Venusians, we were considered adolescents, right? Primitive world. And in consciousness, he underwent confluence, a rite which candidates must absorb the full sensory echo of a world in crisis and remain unbroken by empathy. So when he stepped into this chamber, he saw all the suffering that was being incurred upon the earth. Okay. And apparently he did weep, he did cry, when he was shown how bad the earth was getting. And so we could say that that really left an impact on him. Okay. So that's what inspired him to eventually come and help the earth. Okay. So why did the Earth matter for the Venusians? Well, it turns out that the society and civilization of Venus, even though it's operating on a higher density or dimensional reality, is still interconnected to the Earth via entanglement. So what happens here on the Earth apparently affects all the planets in our solar system. And that is the reason why the Earth mattered to the Venusians, okay? So according to the interplanetary records, the Venusians always used to say that a young world forgives slowly, okay, but it learns with lightning. Okay, that was one of their famous quotes. And to them, the Earth to them was a lightning world, a place where technological acceleration, unfortunately, had outrun their spiritual integration. And of course, we saw a lot of this after the fall of Atlantis. So atomic fire had ripped upon the 20th century, which of course signaled a huge distress to the Venusians, fear spikes, war psychologies, and biospheric stress tones that radiated into the local star neighborhood like red flares. Okay, so apparently all of the stuff that we were doing here, besides detonating the atom bomb, was apparently already affecting the Venusian planet. So, according to Venusian ethics, the proximity obliques services were conducted, and so the question of Earth did rose to the Council of Venus, and inevitably, of course, the High Council of Sirius, the Orion Council of Light, which acted as an interstellar assembly working with the Venusians, were tasked with balancing sovereignty and aiding among the emergent civilization here on planet Earth. So, within this, you could say, structure, the United Federation of Planets was, of course, involved. And just to let you guys know, the United Federation of Planets is only operable within our local star cluster, okay? There are only about 600 to about 800 worlds that are members of this association of planets. So it's also important to understand that it is not an empire, but it acts as an accord between the different solar systems that exist within our local star cluster. So the lattice of worlds that agree to the four principles of co-arising are non-domination, transparent reciprocity, cultural continuity, and stewardship of the commons, which includes star systems, lanes, and subtle fields. So the Federation's Contact Commission reviewed the petitions from member worlds like Venus. When a nearby civilization does show signs of self-annihilation like we did when we detonating the atom bomb, that's when they step in, of course. Okay, so the commission ruled is simple. Their commission rule is very simple and severe, okay? And that is non-interference unless invited. And even then, assistance must amplify indigenous wisdom and not supplant it. So in practice, this means sending envoys rather than armies, right? Mentors rather than rulers, and mirrors rather than masters. So the chosen, of course, was Valor Thoren, okay? And so he did have to undergo some trials to prove himself to the United Federation of Worlds, or of planets, as they call themselves. And so many candidates for this envoy mission were, participating, and they were all tested in what is known as 3 halls, okay? The halls of mirror, which is directly related to self-knowledge. So what this provided for the, people that wanted to volunteer was a simulated reality force that a candidate, in order for, how can I say this? A simulated reality force that candidates had to confront their own shadows, the hunger for status, right? The itch to be a savior, because they wanted to make sure that they weren't going to be sent to the earth to try to become a savior, a messiah type figure. So they needed to overcome all of that, okay? The subtle violence of believing that you know better than the earthlings, all right? They had to overcome that. And of course, Val's record, okay? Val Thoren's record notes that in a scenario where he could actually end a war instantly by overriding free will, he refused. He refused, rather choosing instead to cede 30 small reconciliations among village leaders, slower, messier, and of course, Earth members. Okay, so the Hall of Tongues, which is a cultural literacy, indicates that an envoy must always acquire not just languages, and this explains why Commander Valiant Thor spoke all the languages, okay, but what the Federation calls sub-languages, gestures, postures, and even ceremony taboo. So Val could code switch between a Navajo prayer rhyme, a scholar's cadence, and a dock worker's gallow humor without condensation. And he never really imitated, he just joined it, okay? And also, part of his initiation was the halls of threshold, which is has to do with risk ethics. So finally, candidates that were volunteering to help the earth um, are also run through what is known as the thresholds, okay, which are points where one must choose between personal safety and mission integrity. So in the polar orbital event, a training craft lost phase cohesion above any icy moon. And so with the system failing, the protocol favored jettisoning cargo to restore the balance. And the cargo was a library of seed songs, the living heritage of a minor world. Val took the harder path, okay? He anchored the craft to his own biofield, keeping the library intact while risking synaptic burn. He also carried the scars for a year and a new depth of humility for a lifetime. And so, after the thresholds, what is known as the thresholds, right, the initiation processes, the commission did convene. The vote was not unanimous. Some feared that the earth would devour any envoy, but the choice was made. Valor Thoren would become our envoy. And then, of course, he became Valiant Thor to us. Commander Envoy of the Venusian detachment to Earth, reporting to the Federation's local liaison circle with a mandate narrow and difficult, right, as he was tasked with. And so his mission began in the 1950s, okay? And part of his mission, or his objective rather, was to establish discreet contact with Earth authorities, right? When he met with Eisenhower, that was the main one, right? Creating the positive military programs that led to Solar Warden and what we call today the Alliance, capable of restraining, of course, nuclear escalation. Also, part of his objective of coming to Earth was to seed interspecies ethics in scientific communities, introducing concepts like biofields, coherence, and non-destructive energy gradients without triggering cultural panic. Also, part of the objective was to locate and empower organic nodes, humans whose conscious courage and creativity could ripple through the systems, like artists, teachers, healers, and people that were brave statesmen. And then part of the objective, finally, but not least, was to hold the non-interference line, okay? No coercion, no tech drops that would short circuit the developmental arc, and no public display that could collapse the social order here on the earth. And so he was assigned different companions. So I'm going to reveal them for the first time. Again, this is taken from one of my chapters in my unpublished book that I'm still working on. So Valiant Thor did not come alone, okay? According to the interplanetary records, he was joined with a gentleman by the name of, a female by the name of Jill, a gentleman by the name of Dawn, and another female by the name of Tanya, who were fellow Venusians in this, of course, legend that served as triune support to Valiant Thor. So Jill was a cultural weaver. Dawn acted as a security and transport master. Tanya was a biosignal analyst and healer, and their craft was known as the Vishantra, which nested in a high altitude phase band, able to step down into the electromagnetic spectrum for brief windows. So the arrival. The arrival was in 1957, okay, when he met with Eisenhower. He appeared formally as a secured parameter, not so much arriving as allowing himself to be noticed. The first meeting was a choreography of civility. Valiant Thor offered no weapons, only a non binding memorandum, a program for peaceful transition away from nuclear brinkmanship, including a study series on coherence physics, how human intention, collective trauma, and electromagnetic fields entangle, and a roadmap for global cooperation, which led to the eventual signing of over 109 countries within the alliance. Okay. Some officials were, of course, intrigued, right? Because he was telepathic. He spoke every language. He didn't age. And others saw only a political liability. Those were probably members of the deep state. But Val learned quickly that empires fear gentle remedies. They require enemies to justify themselves. And so the envoy, Valiant Thor, adjusted that he shifted from top down briefings to bottom up influence, quiet conversations with scientists, theologians, and of course artists. So he just didn't just meet with Eisenhower and generals that were working with the alliance, but he also met with scientists. He also met with theologians and artists. All right, that were ready to understand this next level of science or this next level of civilization. And so he also spent nights among the civil rights organizers. He also spent mornings with lab technicians and long afternoons with policy staffers who still believed policy could be humane. So the Federation protocols in a fractured world, which that's what they consider the Earth, a fractured world, stand as this, okay? The hardest part was holding the line. Offers came, deals, temptations, right? I believe Eisenhower did meet with several alien groups besides the Venusians and the members of the United Federation of Planets who were, again, willing to give us even more dangerous technologies like the Naboo or the Greys. But of course, he declined, because Truman is the one who, created that pact with them, not Eisenhower. So, offers did come from various non-terrestrials, deals, temptations, traps disguised as joint ventures. And of course, Valiant Thor was the only one that was able to actually make sense to Eisenhower. Okay. So the Federation knew that gifting advanced propulsion or energy synthesis to a species that still is healing from tribal trauma is like handling a torch to a toddler in a library. And that is the reason why, it took a while for the United Federation of Worlds to give this advanced technology to the US government. Of course, 10 years later, in 1965, that's when they were given the green light to give us the advanced technologies because of the fact that the negative secret societies had already created breakaway groups. But anyways, that is a different story. Valiant Thor kept the equations to himself and concentrated on ethics before engines. Okay. Now, Valiant Thor did introduce the concept of what is known as the Covenant tech, technologies that only operate in the presence of coherent, cooperative biofields. In other words, machines that refuse to function for violent intent. And so with the Earth years away from mastering such type of technology, Valiant focused on human software, reconciliation circles, trauma-informed leadership, and the long education of the heart. So, why the Venusians? Well, again, the Venusians as the closest planet to us, which, again, harbors civilizations from the fifth dimensional level of reality and up, were pretty much already being affected with the detonation of the atom bomb. So what Valiant Thor taught was, again, he was introducing technology, but as long as it aligned with spiritual ethics, okay? Okay, so in terms of technologies, there was this thing that he called the field first, which stated that consciousness organizes matter. And this is something that he introduced to the earth scientists. He attended to the idea of understanding how the field works, both on a personal level and a familial level, on a civic level, and of course, on a collective level, in terms of mastering its outcomes. He also talked about coherence before power, right? So, in a lot of ways, he did, you could say, mentor the alliance in its earliest stages. He talked about coherence before power, which is energy scales to the level of love and responsibility, right? As opposed to using technology without the love and responsibility. He also taught the principles of reciprocity. So again, Valiant Thor did act as a mentor to us, where every invention must include a repair for the harm its predecessor caused. Okay, and he also talked about transparency, integrity, right? Uh, you could say things that share what can be shared without violating dignity or safety. And then, last but not least, he also taught the earthlings stewardship, all right? Consider the unborn as active constituents in every decision. So there were some tests, there were some setbacks. And overall, of course, now the alliance is in, you could say, in a position to liberate the earth. Okay. So Earth did not just pivot overnight, of course. Wars did continue even after the meeting that took place between Eisenhower and Valiant Thor. Programs were classified. Okay, some of Val's allies were actually discredited. A few suffered for their courage. So the envoy filed reports to the Federation noting both the resilience and the reactivity of the human family. Still, notable progress appeared, new healing modalities, interfaith alliances, and of course, the beginnings of a planetary ecology. And so the commission renewed his mandate, the Venusian Commission, not because the mission had succeeded, but because it had truly began. So, what truly mattered to Valiant Thor was the right choice, right? What truly mattered to Valiant Thor, the right choice was not only his skill, okay? It was his refusal to despair, because on Venus, despair is an error of math, okay? It confuses short timelines with true outcomes. Val could sit with a grieving mother in Baltimore, a physicist at a checkboard in Princeton or at a talkboard, and a soldier haunted by orders in the public, and see in each the same golden reminder, the fraction that never reduces to zero. And so he trusted that remainder more than he feared our noise. And so you could say that Val never left, okay? He just kind of faced in and out, but he never left. He was always working with the Alliance from behind the scenes. His legacy is not a fleet in the sky, it is a corridor, a path of practices, agreements, and inner technologies that any culture can walk when it's finally tired of bleeding. So when future historians of many worlds look back, they, won't ask if Valiant Thor proved himself to be Venusian. Uh, they'll all they'll ask a sharper question, and that is, did he preserve, or did his presence help us remember who we really are? And if the answer is yes, even by one compassionate inch, then the envoy did precisely what the Federation sent him to do. So, um, again, going back to his early years in Venus, Val Thoren trained in what is known as harmonic engineering and ethical meditation within the Etherian, right? That was the city that he was from. Also, he underwent what the Federation calls vetting process, which is the passing of the halls of mirrors, right? Tongues and thresholds, overcoming his ego and his willingness to serve without acting as a messiah figure. So he proved himself. And then, of course, after all of that, he was assigned to the earth in the 1950s. And then, of course, we do know that when he entered DC, diplomatic channels submitted a non-binding peace ethic memorandum, pivots to grassroots influence when the power structure resisted. Okay, and in addition to all of this, his mid-mission was seeds coherence physics concepts quietly, mentor scientists from behind the scenes, also artists to work with artists from behind the scenes, and organizers that modeled the non-interfering protocol. And then the ongoing phase was to what? To retract from public visibility. Okay, this is why he's always worked from behind the scenes. And so his mission always continued through distributed networks and inner technologies known as the corridor. So, operations that were attributed to Commander Valiant Thor and the Earth Alliance are, we could say, well, before I explain those, we could say that Valiant Thor, described in Alliance lore as a non-terrestrial strategist embedded with select US and allied programs to accelerate the Earth's transition into a sovereign high-frequency civilization. All right. His portfolio focused on the non-kinetic containment of hostile actors, technology transfer with ethic consideration, artifact protection, and timeline stabilization. So his first role was given as a senior liaison, High Council of Venus, Earth Alliance Joint Directorate. That was his main role. Part of that role was the core mandate, which was to prevent nuclear and AI civilization kill scenarios, to secure organic human timelines, to uplift governance standards, well, free government standards, alliance, to broker non-aggression pacts with off-world groups, right? Like the regressive reptilians and greys. And here's pretty much a full explanation of what he did with the Earth Alliance. Okay, so overall, and within the inner circles of the Earth Alliance, you could say that he is known as a calm person, and he did arrive not to conquer, right, but to help, to course correct our timeline, to steer a young world, primitive world, let's say, as seen by the Venusians, away from a cliff that we couldn't see during the 1950s. So, of course, history later referred to him as Commander Valiant Thor, the envoy commander from Venus, and liaison to what? Non-natal coalition on Earth that later became known as the Earth Alliance. So Thor, Valiant Thor, came with no ultimate agenda, only a corridor, okay? A disciplined way to combine consciousness and capability so that technology never outran or overcame the human heart, okay? The corridor would also have to be built from both ends by an interstellar accord that guarded the ethics of contact and by an earth-born movement, hence the alliance, ready to outgrow the gravity well of the old empires, or what we call the old guard, the cabal. So mandates of the United Federation of Worlds to help a chaotic world was this. Within this protocol, the United Federation of Planets, again, consisting of over 600 worlds within our local star cluster, is not a throne, but an agreement, okay? Worlds that pledge non-domination, transparent reciprocity, cultural continuity, and most importantly, stewardship of the commons. So the Federation noticed that the Earth, not because of its war alone, but because of its signal density, its music, its cries, its inventions, like negative technologies, its prayers, spiking the aura through the local star neighborhood. Everyone within this local star neighborhood was, you could say, very concerned for the Earth, okay? So Venus, of course, was the planet who petitioned first to the United Federation of Worlds. And so in their high atmospheric second envelope, which I've already described, right? The Venusians don't live on the surface like we do. The Venusians perceive the Earth's double potential, the genius to heal at planetary scale and the capacity to burn itself out in one impatient century. So the Federation granted what is known as a conditional envoy mandate to observe, to advise, and assist, but not to usurp, but not to take over. So any aid must amplify indigenous wisdom and defend human self determination. So Valiant Thor, again, born as Valor Thoren of Atheron, that was the name of his city where he came from, was selected after he proved three things in the Federation trials. He could face the shadows of the Savior and refuse to override free will. Okay. Secondly, he could speak across subcultures without stealing their voice. Thirdly, he could accept risk without gambling with another people's destiny. So you could say that long before the fleet emblems and formal charters, the Earth Alliance began as a what? As a stitching of nodes, scientists and people that were working in alternative medicines, within, of course, government circles, three-letter agencies, right, that were rebelling against the mainstream, chaplains, linguistics, pilots, poets. The alliance is more than just military personnel, guys. The alliance consists of scientists, medics, linguists, pilots, poets, and people who, of course, saw the loyalty of the Earth was, knowing that the Earth was heading in a negative trajectory, prove their loyalty to the Earth. That's what I was trying to say. And of course, some did wore military insignia, and many wore none. Okay. So the extent of the alliance goes beyond just military personnel. And so what bounded them was a vow of stewardship and a quiet agreement to save the Earth. Truth without spectacle was part of their, you could say, what's the word I'm looking for? Part of their motto, defense without domination, progress without forgetting the weak. So Val's first task was to what? Find these people, right? And he called it the lattice small groups trained to stay coherent under pressure, to translate advanced concepts into ethical bound prototypes, and then to keep the channels open between communities that usually suspend each other, right, through controlled academias, laboratories and farms, right, monasteries and maker shops. So Valiant Thor, when he did come to the Earth, he did deliver a non-binding memorandum, right, to de-escalate nuclear brinkmanship, to refrain energy research around non-destructive gradients, and to create bicameral councils where scientists and ethicists co-sign every consequential project. Okay, the memo was archived up until now. So going back to the grassroots window, right? The birth of the alliance, what we call today the White Hats, we could say, which actually began in the late 1950s, 1960s. Thor did shift tactics, Valiant Thor, that is. Fewer marble rooms, more kitchens and chalkboards. He met with civil rights organizers and lab techs on the night shifts. He field trained medics in coherence breathing and contact hygiene and how to stay truthful without triggering collapse. So he taught quietly in seminar circles, seeding ideas that would later, of course, surface as biofield medicine, restorative justice, and ecological thinking. And so as the alliance matured between the 1980s and the year 2000, the lattice became the infrastructure, small interoperable cells that could actually invoke covenant technology, systems designed with ethical interlocks so they simply would not operate for predatory intent, a door that opens only to cooperative biofields, a network that throttles when deception spikes, propulsions that deface if it is weaponized. And the whole point was not to disable the human will, but to nudge it towards stewardship. Okay. And so the rules of the corridor, and this is what Valiant Thor would and wouldn't do are you guys ready for this? His mission, part of his mission, was not to be coercive. So he practiced what is known as non coercion, no mind control, right? He couldn't use his telepathic powers to control the earthlings, okay? No, you could say, mimetic bits or mimicking bits or forced disclosures. Truth must land on its own feet. Okay, so that was part of non-coercion. The second thing that was part of his mission protocol was ethics before engines. Ethics before engines, which is a culture must earn access to certain capacities by demonstrating care for the most vulnerable. I'll repeat that again. A culture must earn access to certain capacities by demonstrating care for the most vulnerable. And then the third one was cultural continuity. Cultural continuity, which is every breakthrough must echo a native tradition, whether it's through healing, whether it's through law, like the law of one, or a song. So it grafts rather than amputates. And then fourth is known as transparency gradients, which is share as much as safety allows, right? And increase that share with every increment of public resilience. And then finally, but not least, the reciprocity ledgers, the reciprocity ledgers. For every tool introduced, a repair is budgeted for the harm that was brought about by its what? Predecessors. So these protocols, of course, frustrated opportunists and comforted the people that had ethics and had somewhat consciousness, right? They also formed what we call the alliance immune system, right? So there are certain rules and principles that was actually laid down by Valiant Thor that every member of the alliance had to adhere to in order to what? To execute a successful mission in the elimination of the cabal. And also, of course, joint operations, missions that stretch from the Quiet War included Operation Harmonics, which is an energy reframing. And what that was this was aimed where more energy research from extracted combustion to coherence-based gradients, devices that amplify ambient potentials without tearing ecological fabric, okay? Method was a triptych of teams, physicists, ethicists, and of course, grounders, farmers, grid engineers, and EMTs, co-design prototypes. So if a device failed the covenant test, it worked for domination but not stewardship. It was mothballed, not buried. Lessons were published through civilian channels to steer research cultures without spectacle. And the 12 labs also, the 12 lab Concord include nuclear de-risking, and that's what's been going on in the last 10 years. We've been pretty much destabilizing all the nuclear power plants, reduce accidental apocalyptic risk by orders of magnitude, encode fall gentle logics, engineering, and policy patterns that prefer safe degradation over catastrophic failure. So Thor's contribution was conceptual. He taught that systems inherit the nervous system of their makers. Ancient institutions built anxious machines, he used to say. The Alliance responded by installing calm loops, mixed teams trained in conflict, de-escalation embedded right inside fast twitch decision stacks. And also, Commander Valiant Thor was also instrumental in what we called the Golden Dome Grid. the Golden Dome Grid. Let's see. There's a few other things I wanted to share. All right. So the aim of the Golden Dome Grid, right, which was a civilian shielding of the Earth, was to deter mass casualty attacks without militarizing daily life, right? Its method, urban scale coherence lattices, sensor light, citizen friendly fields that nudge crowd towards the de escalation during flashpoints like sports riots, terror panics, and rumor storms. And the domes were not bubbles in the skies, they were behavioral harmonics woven through woven through parks, transit, and media rhythms. So when they work, nothing dramatic happens. And that's the point. And then also, threshold lunar, or rather, Luna. That's another operation that he was instrumental in as far as leading the alliance and implementing. Sanctuary and cleanup rooms. All right. The aim of this threshold Luna was to establish a neutral research clean room of planet to study high energy phenomena away from biosensitive habitats. And this, of course, preserved the Earth's atmosphere. And the method of this was in partnership with off world allies. The Alliance set up what is known as sanctuary zones, demilitarized laboratories dedicated to medicine, agriculture, and low gravity, and trauma science for what? Returning crews, especially those that were part in the off-world programs that had unfortunately been, you could say, hurt in combat, right? In off-world combats. And so Thor's role was to what? Arbitrate jurisdiction. Every experiment required an earthborn steward and a cultural historian alongside the physicist. Also, another thing that they incorporated was what became known as the 108 human software. And the aim of this was to train 108 cross-disciplinary leaders to carry coherence into chaotic systems. The method was a 2-year initiatory track blending ethics, field physiology, conflict literacy, and listening as engineering graduates became tuning forks. They didn't just silence dissent, they clarified it. Their presence reliable reduced corruption, mission creep, and despair. And what he actually taught, Commander Valiant Thor, those who worked with Thor described a pedagogy without pedestal. You know, they said this guy was completely selfless, full of love, right? Full of compassion. He favored demonstrations over decrees, questions over claims. Again, Valiant Thor was never here as a savior, and he clearly displayed Christ consciousness. And so these were the 5 persisting themes, okay? Field first, reality is persuaded by coherence, as Valiant Thor taught us. He was, you know, of course, he was a mentor. You have to understand, he was a mentor to the early alliance. He taught reality is persuaded by coherence. Before you push outcomes, tend the field relationships, rituals, and rhythms. He also taught about sufficiency. Power you cannot steward will punish you. He said, power you cannot steward will punish you. Scale your tools to the love you can hold. Repair as design. Every blueprint must include a remedy for the previous arrow wounds. Okay. And also witnessing. Listening is not a courtesy, it is stabilization. When people are seen, their systems stop shaking. And then, of course, he also taught gentle audacity. Move boldly, but gentler than your fear suggests. He avoided celebrity because you could say a cult is a corrupted uplifter. All right. He preferred small rooms, long silences, and the dignities of anonymity. Okay. And of course, he didn't want to be known as a cult leader. All right. Within the alliance. So again, guys, you have to understand, just like as the Cabal worked with evil regressive aliens, the Alliance worked with positive angelic aliens. And so Valiant Thor was considered an angelic, okay? So let's continue here. He also taught spectacle pressure. Certain factions demanded proof on their terms, craft on the lawn, of course, equations on the napkin, and Thor refused, knowing that a spectacle without maturity triggers fear, not wisdom. Okay. Um, and weaponization drift was another thing, which means that brilliant minds under budget and deadline try to repurpose coherence physics for dominance. Well, the Alliance ethical interlocks caught most attempts, thank God, and the rest were retired with ceremony and grief. Also, narrative smog. Disinformation blurred lines between myth, hoax, and testimony. Thor's counter was patient transparency gradients. Release what the public can metabolize, then widen the circle. Okay? Then widen the circle. So, let's see, what else? What else can I share with you guys about his objectives and what he taught us? Okay, so another thing that he taught the alliance was this concept of the long view, which is what the he believed that the counts as what counts as victory. Okay, the long view, what counts as victory. So by the old metrics, flags, treatise, parades, the mission is perpetually incomplete. But by the corridors metrics, victory looks like fewer headlines, fewer panics and spiral, fewer children who inherit air that hurts to breathe, fewer leaders who mistake volume for truth. And it looks like institutions that metabolize shame without collapsing, laboratories that refuse funding when the strings are wrong, town councils that apologize in public and mean it. And Thor measures success in takt times, which means how quickly a lie is corrected, how long a grunge test, and how soon a community can feel safe again after a siren night. So, in most versions of this non terrestrial from planet Venus, we could say that in the corridors accounting, he faced less visible, right? More acting in the shadows. His signature survives in the way that certain rooms feel when the light comes on, the click when integrity outnumbers appetite, and the sudden quiet in which everyone remembers where they come from. So the Earth Alliance continues, part council, part clinic, part core, right? It's not an organization that you just join, it is a vow that you keep to advance capability only at the speed of consciousness, to seed repair whatever you wherever you see it, and to what meet fear with disciplined gentleness. So one of the things that he wants to be remembered by as we enter this new era, right? When children and future generations ask, well, what did Commander Valiant Thor bring from the stars? Well, he brought not manners, you could say, but he could say he brought, I'm sorry, not engines and technologies. He brought manners and principles to adhere by. And as, of course, many elders know, manners are simply ethics set to what? To live according to the law of one. And so he was a huge example of living the law of one. Okay. Um, let's see. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it, guys. So I did wanted to share this with you guys because a lot of people have been asking me about his history, what he did to become chosen as the envoy for the earth. Well, here you guys go, the untold story of Commander Valiant Thor for the first time on my channel. I'm going to admit, guys, today was a very stressful day. I actually had to buy a new laptop because my laptop wasn't working this morning. And so, me being not tech savvy, I was trying to transfer all the information from one laptop to the next, and I couldn't do it. So what I had to do was I had to take it to a computer expert, and it took him a couple of hours to do so. So here I am broadcasting. For a minute there, I thought I was going to cancel tonight's presentation, and I didn't. Thank God that I was able to transfer all the information from the old unfunctioning laptop to the new laptop. So yeah, today was a very stressful day for me. But here I am, guys. I'm ready to take some Q&A. If you guys have questions, please address them in capital letters. If you guys could give me a second, I do have to get a drink of water. Can you bring me some water, please? I hope you guys enjoy this. Wait, can you bring it to me, please? Thank you, thank you. Yeah, I'll just stay here. I'll just stay here and take some questions. I do want to acknowledge Starcadian in the house. Sorry, brother. I've had a lot going on. I haven't been able to call you. Let's see if I could call you tomorrow. Again, today was a very stressful day. I was running around town trying to fix my laptop, and I couldn't find the right person. And then I tried doing it myself, and I couldn't figure it out. So I had to go buy a new laptop, and then I tried transferring the data. So I almost thought I wasn't going to make it tonight, but here I am, guys. Here I am. Thank you so much for the water, Lovey. So I do want to acknowledge Sherry Shoon in the house.
Hi, light workers.
Lee Star, Aaron H, Lil, Diane B77, Starlight is in the house. Is this drinking water, honey?
Yes.
Okay. And all 2,100 people that are in the house. Thank you guys so much for being here. All right, questions in capital letters, please, so that I could bypass the chat. I noticed that this camera is a lot more clear than my other laptop. It's kind of cool. You guys are so welcome. Yeah, I took that information from one of my chapters in the book that I've been working on for the last 2 years. So I'm giving you guys first dibs on the history of Commander Valiant Thor as he lived his life in Venus prior to being the envoy to the Earth. And again, if you guys are just jumping on, don't forget to watch this from the beginning if you guys want to know more about Commander Valiant Thor. Does Commander Valiant Thor have 6 fingers? No, that is a myth. He has 5 fingers. All right, one of the things that a lot of people are unaware of is that all human civilizations, humanoids, right? You look like us, we look like them, like the Venusians. They're all born with 5 fingers. That's part of the what is known as the galactic human prototype. So all humanoid civilizations have 5 fingers, not 6. Okay, that's a myth. That is not correct. Can Commander Valiant Thor help to stabilize Jupiter so it doesn't send so much intense energy to Earth that causes earthquakes? No, the earthquakes are not being caused by the anomalies of Jupiter. The earthquakes, my friends, are being caused by the solar flares. Okay, the solar flares are interacting with the inner sun of the Earth, the iron sun, what they call in some traditions, that is actually causing the Earth's tectonic plates to begin what is known as its metamorphosis process. Okay, so the Earth, just like we are, is also going through a transformation, right, from a carbon-based structure to a crystalline silica-based Earth structure. But just to let you guys know, the effects of this photon belt that our solar system is entering and the effects of the transformation of our sun, because our sun is also shifting from the yellow sun to the white sun. Even our sun evolves through the different phases. is actually affecting our entire solar system. Okay, so the changes are not just only being measured here on the Earth, they're also being measured across all the planets in our solar system. Mars is being affected, Mercury, Venus, and of course the jovial planets. Thank you so much, Wesley, for that super chat. Sending the love and light of the one infinite creator to Ishmael and all of us here tonight. Well, thank you, Wesley. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Thank you. And one of the things that I forgot to mention is that the Venusian High Council is part of the Emerald Order. Okay, so they do operate within the parameters of the Law of One, obviously. The picture of Valiant Thor, is that an accurate image? Yes, for the most part, Valiant Thor always maintains a youthful appearance. He never ages. So that is a picture of him at 30 years old. Okay. Of course, when he met with Eisenhower, he probably portrayed being in his late 40s. But the guy is ageless. Okay. He never ages. So he controls how he looks. He could look 25 one day, and then another day he could look 45. But you'll never see him as an old man. Okay. You'll never see him as an old man. And yes, he does have dark hair. MJF says he's so handsome. Well, I don't mean to blow it for you ladies, but I believe that Valiant Thor does have a twin flame who is still in Venus. She's still located in Venus. And so, yeah, he is already taken. Okay. He does have a twin flame who is living in Venus as I speak. How old is Commander Valiant Thor? I believe he is about 385, almost 400 years old. I apologize, guys. I forgot to turn off my um, ringer here. So if you guys have been hearing my phone sounds, I apologize for that. I just turned off my ringer so that we don't get any more distractions. How do I communicate with Commander Valiant Thor? Good question. Through intuitive telepathy. Through intuitive telepathy. Is Commander Valiant Thor an immortal? Well, people from a type level 2 interstellar civilization do tend to live for a few thousand years. So, in that regard, yes, he is considered an immortal in comparison to our lifespan. Absolutely. I do have another super chat from Greg. He says, "Hi, brother. Out of billion people, how many will be exalted to such level of 100% of their total brain power?" Good question, Greg. From what I recall, I was informed that the oldest of souls, those that come from dimensions 10, 11, and 12 or beyond, are going to be exalted to using 100% of their full capacity. Whereas some of the other volunteers that came from dimensions 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are going to be using about 50%, 60%. And of course, the Earth Terrans are going to only go up in increments. So only the oldest of souls, those that come from the higher dimensions, are going to be immediately operating at 100% capacity. And there's a reason why they're going to be, you could say, entrusted with so much power, because with great power comes greater responsibility. They're going to be like Christ, right? They're going to be pure-hearted individuals. They're going to be adopting the service to others mentality. And so they're going to use their powers for good. And that's the reason why the oldest of souls are the ones that are going to be tasked with using 100% of their full power. Ishmael, not being human, what is Commander Valiant Thor's physiology? Well, again, he is a human. He's a Venusian human, all right? About 70% of alien life forms are humans, just, on different levels of technological and spiritual, you could say, enlightenment. But he is human, okay? He's Venusian, but he looks human, okay? They're not green, they're not purple, they don't have elongated skulls, they look just like we do. Good question, though. I have another super chat from Canadian Jedi. How's it going, Canadian Jedi? How did Commander Valiant Thor pass through the military when he got here with the military being really paranoid that he must have been really that must have been really hard? Well, what ended up happening was, again, before he met with Eisenhower, um, back then you could say certain members of the alliance had established contact with the Venusian Council as they were asking for help due to Truman's betrayal, right? Signing our government away to the negative alien syndicate. That's how Commander Valiant Thor was peacefully able to hold a meeting with Eisenhower. See, the alliance was operating even before Eisenhower. If you guys want to be technical, Lincoln, Lincoln was the one who jump started the alliance before they effed him, effed him before they eliminated him. So the alliance goes back to the Cold War. Okay, Lincoln, after he died, the alliance began operating in secret. Okay, and so by the time we got to 1940, the alliance was still operative, but not as they are today, of course. And so what ended up happening was the alliance did make contact with the Venusian Council. And that's how they were able to arrange this emergency meeting with him and Eisenhower. Good question. I do have another super chat. Again, when I get transmissions from Commander Valiant Thor, guys, he uses big words. Okay, he uses big words, so that's why some of these words it's hard for me to pronounce. So just bear with me. But he does have a very extended vocabulary, more so than most humans. You have to understand the Venusians have a high Q of 800 to a 12,000, 1,200. Yeah, so their IQ is anywhere from 800 to 1,200. Okay. All right. Question from, is it Ikuth23? Thank you so much for the super chat. Greetings, Ishmael. This is Laura. Okay, your name is Laura. Nice to meet you, Laura. How or when can I know who I am and where I come from? Well, part of taking our cosmic origin course is that at the end of the fourth class, by reading your energy, I'm able to identify what star origin you originated in. So if you take my course, I'm able to read your energy via a Zoom webinar where we're interacting, and I could actually tell you exactly your star origin. Ishmael, many of us are seeing 144 in every conceiver combination. What is the significance of this now? Okay, so if you're seeing 144 periodically, right, frequently, that means that you are part of the Christed army that was sent to the earth. You are part of the forces of light. You are the ground crew warrior, right, that was sent to the earth. So that's what that means. When you keep seeing 144, that means you're a chosen one. Okay, you're a chosen one. Yes, after we become part of the galactic community and we are fully settled in the new Earth, we will have the opportunity to not only meet Commander Valiant Thor in person, but also other positive ETs that are assisting us, like Commander Athena, Commander Cortec, Soltec Ashtar, etc., etc. All right, Lynn Houston. Yes, I will go ahead and send you the link for the fourth class of our cosmic origin in about 3 weeks. Make sure you email me at projectrestorationzion@gmail.com. And another thing I wanted to say is, guys, I don't really use social media. So if you guys are DMing me through, what is it, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever, I just don't have time for social media. So don't think I'm ignoring you. Just know that I don't really use social media. And if anyone else messages you on social media with my name, those are imposters. Make sure you uh, delete and report, of course. Does Commander Valiant Thor know when the Flash is going to be? I would say yes, because at an IQ of 800 to 1200, you could actually begin to access the quantum field, which reveals the future. Absolutely. No, the earthquakes are not tunnels that are being destroyed. That operation was already completed. The earthquakes are natural disasters being caused by the Earth undergoing, or the Earth's effect by the solar flares. Okay. The Earth's effect by the solar flares is what's causing the different earthquakes that are happening right now. Thank you so much, AI, Mo AI, for your super chat. Hi, Mr. Perez. I admire your bold and fearless work. Um, Reached out on your site about your lectures, our Cosmic Origin lecture, but got no reply. Make sure you email me on Project Restoration Zion, because my public email, sometimes I don't have access to that anymore, but my personal email I do. So if you email me there, Project Restoration Zion at gmail.com, I will be able to send you the recording, of course, given that you show me the receipt that you paid for that presentation. Ishmael, is California expected to have a big earthquake? Is asking Patricia. I would say it's every day we're getting closer to that. Yes. So, um, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to hide behind the bush, guys. I'm going to tell you how it is. It looks like the San Andreas fault is actually becoming more unstable every day. Every more so every day. I am so tired. Unfortunately, last night I only slept 2 hours. A lot was going through my brain. Ishmael, I contacted you with a being who had a superhero body chrome note color, but see through, each hair strand made of white light. Where do you think he is from? He looked like plasma. This is a question from Hope is Real. Well, if you look like plasma, plasma beings come from dimensions 10, 11, and 12. They are from a pre-material realm where they only use their energy body. They don't use crystalline structure, so they don't have physical form like other beings do. But that means that they are from 10, 11, or 12 dimensions if they are pure plasma, which means, Hope is Real, that you could be an emissary from the 10th, 11, or 12th dimension. That's what that means. All right. So you're probably seeing a version of your future self that is trying to make contact with you. Good question, though. Yeah, they don't use vehicles like physical vehicles. They use what is known as prematerial liquid light, pure plasma. Ishmael, can we still party in 5D or is that lower dimensional? This is a question from JC. Um, I'm not sure. I am not sure if we could still party. I mean, I don't party, right? But I do know that 5D reality is much more suitable and it's better than 3D reality. That's all I know. I don't even think you guys will want to party in 5D reality when you're living your full potential and you're, using a lot of power. Will our computers and cell phones still work after the flash? I don't think so. I don't think so. One of the things that the flash will be doing is taking out the entire electrical grid. But if you become telepathic, you won't no longer need your cell phone or your computer, if for that regard. Are angels like Thor? Well, like I mentioned in my last live, angels come from dimensions 4, 5, and 6. So ETs, like the Pleiadians, are also considered angelic to the earthling. But as we evolve to their reality, we become equals. We become angelic humans again. You only party if you're missing something, says King Jeffrey Lambert. Okay. Which Abraham Lincoln started to work with the alliance? Well, the only Abraham Lincoln. There was only one Abraham Lincoln that helped to ignite the alliance after he ended the Confederate States, or after he won the war with the Confederate States. Um, you guys are asking me questions about Valiant Thor's twin flame. Does he know all of you? I am not sure, hun. Guys, I'm not sure. I said hun. I called you guys hun. I don't know. I called my lovey hun. I guess I am on automatic right now, but I'm not sure, guys. I am not sure. You mean our microwaves will not work after the flash? No. No technological gadgets are going to work after the flash. Did everyone contract to be here or just the 144,000? Good question. Well, you have to understand the new number 144,000 is a metaphor describing the hertz and frequency of our ascension. But to answer your question, all the 70 million plus advanced souls that are down here all volunteered to be here at this time. That's right. We won't need gadgets after the flash. You guys forget that we have an inbuilt technology, natural organic technology, that is more superior than any computing system once it turns on. So we're going to be using our own inner software. David Essington says, please remind folks, even 6D up need to still be present, grounded here, now, and embodying, I guess you're saying, Christ consciousness and sending it out as beacons of light. Well, yeah, because when we hit the sixth dimension, we have the opportunity to become part of a social memory complex where we begin to fuse as one collective while maintaining our individuality, of course, and free will. Very similar to the particle and the wave thing. Ishmael, how long is phase 4? This is a question from Kim Radowski. Well, for those who didn't know, phase 4 is the final phase that the Alliance is conducting in terms of eliminating what's left of the deep state. From what I was told, it lasts for about 6 months, and we entered phase 4. What was it? 4 weeks ago, 4.5 weeks ago. So phase 4 would probably end sometime before December. I mean, things could start happening now, especially with the military that was deployed by Donald Trump in the last few days, seizing Washington, D.C. and all the major cities, taking over the police role. So it could happen sooner than later, but overall, approximately, it takes about 6 months for a phase to be completed. Will the sheeple be using telepathy too? Will their bodies too turn to crystalline too? This is a question from Marjorie. Well, I don't call the unawakened sheeple. I'm sorry, but we have to even respect the Earth Terrans who just don't get it yet, that are still asleep. But no, they're not going to be having any abilities. The abilities are only going to be given to the star people that are down here, us, the ground crew, the advanced souls. Okay, to answer your question, the Earthlings are going to be ascending in increments. They're not going to be gaining the supernatural abilities yet. I do have a super chat from MOHD Alzubi. Thank you so much. Hi, Mr. Perez. I have 2 questions. How do I find the twin flame? Should we wait for the solar flash? And are all the prophets incarnate on earth now, like the wise prophet Solomon? Wow, this is a very 3-part good question. I'm not sure about the twin flame. If you have not found your twin flame, I'm not sure how to answer that. Sometimes they both incarnate at the same time. Sometimes one comes down here and the other stays up there. So I don't know. But yeah, I do know that upon the ascension, everybody will be kind of reunited with their counterpart, right? And as far as like, are all the prophets down here on the earth? Like you're talking about all the sages from old, like Socrates, Confucius, Moses, Elijah, John the Baptist. Um, I believe, yes, I believe that a lot of those souls that were, again, instruments of the divine have all incarnated on the earth. It could be any one of you. Okay, it could be any one of you. So, yes, they have all returned. Greg is saying, will we trade in our cars for flying saucers? Well, the flying saucers in the Star Trek type of technology is only going to exist within the fourth D Earth. Okay. If you bypass the fourth D Earth, you won't need to depend on external technology, my friends. You'll be able to use your own inner software, which is the organic living technology within all of you. You know, this technology was once available on the earth during previous epochs, okay? The golden age of Egypt implemented it until, of course, they became infiltrated and corrupt. It was implemented during the time of Atlantis by the original Council of Melchizedek, high priest and high priestess, before the infiltration of Marduk. It was also implemented during the times of Lemuria. And for the last few thousand years, this inner technology has been laying dormant, but now, my friends, it's getting ready to turn on. That's right. Eddie Avila reminds us that Christ is within and not without. Thank you so much for that reminder. Did all humans contract to be here at this time? That's another good question. Um, well, this is how I'm going to answer that. Everything happens for a reason. So whoever is down here with the soul, not the NPCs, are meant to be here during these transformative times. Okay. So yes, everybody was contracted to be here at this time, whether you're an old soul or an ascending earth soul, young soul. Yes, of course, in the new earth, we don't need passports to travel. That is a for sure thing. How do I know beyond a doubt that I am an advanced soul? As asking Furf. Well, the way to explain that is if you are interested in metaphysics, deep knowledge, spiritual knowledge, if you have an interest in the stars, extraterrestrial life, um, if you are interested in like the supernatural, chances are that you're an old soul. Okay. But if you have no interest in beyond this realm, and learning beyond this realm, then you're probably a young soul. But the fact that you guys are here, falling deeper into the rabbit hole, is an indicator that you're all old souls. Okay, that you are all old souls. Ishmael, is Valiant Thor working with Donald Trump? Well, he's working with the Donald Trump that is hidden, not the one in the White House. Okay, the one in the White House is an actor, but he's working with the real Trump. Yes, not the one in the White House. No, no, we're not part of the fallen beings. Just because we decided to incarnate in human bodies does not mean that we're part of the fallen angel collective, okay? There's a difference, guys. The fallen angel collective are celestials that rebelled against the one infinite creator. We didn't rebel against the one infinite creator, all right? We followed the one infinite creator and we adhere to its principles, and that's why we're down here as the ground crew. Again, if you're just signing on, make sure you watch this from the beginning as I reveal for the first time the untold story and history of Commander Valiant Thor, the different, you know, challenges and trials that he had to undergo in Venus in order to be picked by the United Federation of Planets to be the envoy for the Earth. Okay, many volunteered from Venus, but Commander Valiant Thor was the one who proved himself. And again, one of these things was to not act as a savior, right? To not come down here and claim to be like a god. And he did that very good. He was always humble, okay? And he still is. All right, one more questions, guys. One more question. Are the Watchers bad? You must be referring to the Anunnaki. Not all of them, all right? Part of the Anunnaki rebelled against the One. They followed Enki. And the other half that were actually driven by their genetics, Syrian, Pleiadian, Syrian, or Lyran genetics, did not rebel against God. So not all the Watchers are evil, okay? Only those that took over the affairs of our world during the times of Atlantis. Thank you so much, Cassandra, for that super chat. All right, guys, may the God Force be with you. I will see you guys in 2 nights on Saturday night for another beautiful presentation. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Good night.